Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
I think we are ready to start. Okay, hello everyone to our next Design Thinking Barcamp 2020 keynote. It's an honor for me to actually announce this one because we have someone from IBM here with us, Gerhard Pfau. I will talk to you about him in a minute and tell you a little bit about him. But let me first tell you a personal story about IBM and myself. My name is Jan Schmiedgen, by the way, for those of you who don't know me yet. I am one of the co-organizers of the Barcamp. I'm a partner at Codify, but I'm also part of a research team at the Hasso-Plattner Institute in Potsdam, where we do design thinking research, especially when it comes to scaling design thinking. And for that, in the past years, we did lots of research and visited many companies, for example, Intuit and others, and also IBM, to see how they actually scaled design thinking in the whole organization. And from what we saw, there were many great examples. IBM was really an outstanding one insofar as the way how they codified design thinking and made it accessible to people new to the subject was really awesome. This is why I also shared some article in the chat already for you. We also shared that one in Fleep. And yes, I think we can learn quite a lot how IBM developed their design thinking practice over the years and turned it into what they call nowadays enterprise design thinking. And then I come to the person from IBM who will tell us about that today. And I really warmly welcome Gerhard Pfau. Gerhard is an IBM distinguished designer, and he leads design thinking, or enterprise design thinking, as IBM calls it, in Europe. He loves designing experiences for people and deeply understands technology, which also made him the leader of the IBM Academy. And he's also the one who led the team who created the studio in Böblingen, because IBM has created a very impressive network of studios all over the world, where teams work dispersed but co-located, I think they call it at IBM. And he's also mentoring and nurturing the local design community in the area and also in Germany in general and worldwide, of course. So there's quite a lot of bio for Gerhard, but I think that's not what's important here. He's an IBM Distinguished Designer, which is kind of the highest rank that you can reach in IBM. What's more important is what he will tell us about today. And I'm really happy that he will share some core elements of enterprise design thinking so that you know what it is about. And that he will talk about how we can create engaging and effective design thinking experience in a situation where we cannot meet face to face. So how can remote design thinking actually become a great experience? And how can that be an even more powerful way of changing a team's culture than maybe even relying on face-to-face interactions? So he will talk about things like that. And I really warmly welcome Gerhard. Hello, Gerhard.
Hey, Jan. Hey, hello, everyone. Thank you for the nice and kind introduction. Let's get my screen share going here.
And as always, while Gerhard is putting up his screen share, put your questions into the Q&A and into the chat. We will collect it. And in the end, you will have the chance to, well, have Gerhard answering some of your questions. Okay, let's go.
All right, thanks again. Yeah, as Jan already mentioned, I'm a distinguished designer at IBM, and that may not tell you much, but it's kind of like an executive position in the ranks of designers. And I'm responsible for enterprise design thinking in Europe. What that means is basically I'm helping internal teams, but also clients, to get value from design thinking as quickly as possible. And for me, this is the first time to join you all for Design Thinking Barcamp, and I'm honored and really happy to be here with you today. And what I'm going to take you on a journey during the next 30 minutes. a journey about creating delightful outcomes for the people we serve, no matter if we are in a face-to-face setup or working from remote. So what I prepared for today are the following topics. So that's kind of the structure of the talk. So first, we will see how we can innovate or to become essential for our users. And next, I'm talking a little bit about what Jan mentioned in the intro, how transforming towards a human-centric approach helps us to achieve our goals, and how we can make that transition happen and at scale. And finally, we will have a look at the current situation to see how we might be able to leverage the chances and the opportunities it presents to us. So I will also touch upon really quickly what IBM does to support you all during the current situation. For example, we've opened up the entire enterprise design thinking site and online courses and toolkit for free. I'll speak a little bit later about that during my talk. So, but let's start with the first episode, and let's have a look at what it means to be essential in the first place. So, IBM's purpose, and every IBMer knows that, is to create solutions for people that become essential for them. And to be able to do that, we have to innovate. And if you look at IBM's innovation journey, it's always been a journey of technology and a journey of design. And that for us started decades ago when Thomas Watson Jr., IBM's CEO and the son of IBM's founder, he said this famous sentence, you may have heard already before: good design is good business. So that's kind of like the mantra from the 1970s, and as true today as it was back then. But what does it mean to be essential? Well, if you think back like 50 years ago, IBM was essential to send men to the moon and, more importantly, to get them back to Earth safely. Or if you fast forward to today, IBM is essential for financial services. 87% of all credit card transactions are processed by an IBM system. Or another example, similarly, the airline industry. I'm not sure when you purchased your last airline ticket. For me, it was sometime in January, I believe. When you did it, you probably did not think of IBM. Nevertheless, 23 of the 25 largest airlines are using IBM to offer you a reliable and delightful experience. Same as 92% of the top banks and 70% of the largest retailers. So there is quite something about being essential here. The big question is now, what does it take to be or to become essential? And from our perspective, it means that we innovate by combining a humble understanding of people's needs with breakthrough technology like IBM Cloud, like Watson Health, like AI, like security. And doing that, we envision and build products and solutions that matter to our users, often so much that they become essential for them. For a solution to become essential, it helps a lot if people have a delightful experience with it. So creating a user delight is not an end in itself. It's 2020, as we all know, and customers won't accept business solutions and services that are harder to use than what they're used to from their private lives. So a few more fun facts, or maybe not fun facts, but to build on that, customer expectations evolve continuously, and the world is changing at an enormous speed as we experience it right now. So for example, did you know that the life expectancy of a company listed in the Standard & Poor's 500 index, it was 60 years in 1958, and meanwhile it decreased to 22 years as of 2017. So there has never been a tougher time to be in business, crisis or not, right? And we live in this world of mass disruption, and we see, and as the slides and the numbers here suggest, is that all businesses can be disrupted. So that's one thing. The next thing, though, is while we see that companies go out of business, we also see that companies thrive when they follow human-centered principles. Recent studies from Forrester and Envision and McKinsey and others provided clear evidence and convincing KPIs. And I've put together on this slide a few of you. I won't talk about it in the details, but as you can see, if something makes you go to market 2 times faster, then that's obviously a huge plus. Or if it helps drive up the revenue in your organization, that's something which makes your business people happy, right? And the business people do not care about design thinking. They call about facts and numbers and the balance sheet. And so therefore, we see a clear differentiation between human-centered enterprises and traditional companies. So what are these human-centric businesses doing differently than anyone else, you might ask? Well, first of all, they put people at the center when they drive innovation. They iterate quickly to minimize costs of failures, right? And they do this inclusively across silos throughout the enterprise. And I'm going to talk about IBM a little bit, like once in a while, and during this talk, and it's not so much to kind of like to show how great of a company IBM is. It is in my mind, but I'm a little biased. It's to provide you a real life example on how a large company is basically turning around the way we are doing business. So we are on such a journey. We are on a journey to become more and more human-centered. And this all started with this woman, Ginny Rometty. She took the helm as CEO in 2012, and she knew a thing or two about human-centric innovation. Therefore, she set a clear course with the goal to create delightful, meaningful, and valuable experiences for our clients. And by putting a focus on design and a radically collaborative approach, based on design thinking, based on Agile, she changed the way how IBM works and how we at IBM work. And now in the next section of this keynote, we're going to look at how she has accomplished that. So the big question is, how can we scale our transformation? How can we become or stay essential when we by acquiring a human-centered mindset, and how can we change the entire organization to do that? So in the next few minutes, we will have a look at how we do this at IBM with speed and at enterprise scale. So meet this gentleman, Phil Gilbert. He's my boss, and Ginny asked him to become the general manager design at IBM in 2012. And the mission he got was, as you can read it here on the slide, to create a sustainable culture of design and design thinking to drive that human-centric innovation at global scale. And here's how Phil approached it. Focusing on 3 Ps, people, practices, and places, he changed the way how we are working. And doing that, we are now able to create more delightful outcomes for our users faster and at scale. And you're probably curious about some of the details. Well, let's unpack that a little bit. And we start with the first P, with people. So when we started our journey on the product side at IBM, we did an evaluation. We just did some kind of like, we counted people, basically. And we found out that for every single designer we had on board, there were roughly 72 engineers who were writing code. We set a goal to change that ratio from 1 to 72 to 1 to 8, to put a dedicated focus on the user experience and to build the research capabilities we need to make sure we are solving the right problems. Meanwhile, IBM employs 2,500 practicing designers, designers by education and design leaders, and 20,000 IBM designers, developers, and consultants are there to create solutions and experiences for our clients. So that sounds pretty amazing, I guess. But as brilliant as it sounds, we still had a bit of an issue. And you see it when you look at that blue slice on the chart. That's the designers at IBM. The gray part is like everyone else at IBM. So it looked like we still had a slight issue, but actually things are much better than it looked at first glance. Because meanwhile, a pretty decent amount of design thinkers, we have a pretty decent amount of design thinkers at IBM. And why are they important, you may ask? Well, here's a quote from my boss again, Phil Gilbert. He said this when we came out with our first version of design thinking at IBM. He said, the goal of designers is to design great solutions. The goal of design thinking is to ensure they get a chance. To ensure they get a chance. That's why we have trained so many people in design thinking, to teach them a human-centered mindset, right? Because we cannot, like, not everybody is going to be a designer, right? But the aim to create solutions and products that delight our users is something which needs to be a driver for everyone. And one tool, one of our practices, and now we are talking about the second P, is enterprise design thinking. I could talk about this for about an hour or two if we had the time, but we don't. And so I want to limit it to like a really short intro to give you a sense for what enterprise design thinking is. It's our framework to uncover user needs, to align us on intent, and to deliver outcomes at speed and scale. So the framework consists of 3 underlying principles: a focus on creating delightful outcomes for our users, so our users become the North Star, a mindset of restless reinvention, iterate fast, fail fast, learn fast, and then finally the principle of diverse empowered teams. So we put everybody on the same table whom we need to create that delightful solutions: engineers, architects, developers, offering managers, marketeers, legal people if that's required. So that forms a diverse empowered team. And by having that diverse empowered team, you're accomplishing 2 things. Well, first of all, you can move fast because everybody is involved all the time and can basically raise the red flag if they have an issue, can be on board to make decisions. But also you get this multitude of different perspectives. And with those different perspectives, we come to richer solutions than if we would limit our teams. So then secondly, the loop. The loop is our behavior model. It intentionally aligns us with the current continuous delivery world. And it's a continuous cycle of observing, reflecting, and making. So we observe our users, we observe the market, we observe to learn about our users' needs and to validate our ideas. Then we get together to reflect as a team, right? And by reflecting, we bring all the ideas, all the insights together, and we form intent, and we decide how to go forward. And finally, making. Design thinkers have a bias towards action, so we want to get our hands dirty. So if you look at my desk here, it's filled with these little prototyping tools, which you can see, obviously. So that's the first stage of making, but of course the additional phase is coming. And whatever we do, we stay in the loop, right? So after making comes again reflecting and observing, because we do something, we put it out in the world, we test it, we learn from it, and then we iterate and do that really quickly. And then the third element are the 3 keys. They're actually not so much like design thinking elements, but management practices. They put the enterprise in enterprise design thinking. They make design thinking scale for large, geographically dispersed teams and challenges with enterprise complexity. We will have a deeper look at them in a minute. And all that together is called enterprise design thinking. And you can find more details about it in the URL on the lower left of the slide, ibm.com/design/thinking. So now to the keys. Let's have a deeper look at those, because they might be interesting and you may have not heard about them so far. Let's start with HILs. HILs are human-centric statements of intent that align us across teams. HILs have a dedicated structure. They consist of a who, a what, and a wow. Who, what, wow. So let's look at the example on the right. So what is the who? The who is a sales leader in that example. It's whom we are designing for. What is what they get when we finish our work? When you finish this piece of work, what will they get? What they don't have so far. And the wow is something that is so exciting for them, so that they go, wow, that's what I always wanted to have, right? So that is how we are riding HILs. And this is an internal example, but we do the same thing for our products and solutions we do for clients. So who, what, wow, if you remember that, this is kind of like the the three W's that form you used to form a hill, and those hills create direction and provide the direction for the team. So to guide them towards the solution and guides them towards having like keeping their end user in mind. The second key is playbacks. Playbacks are story-driven presentations that focus on the future experience of our users. They bring stakeholders in the loop. They are a safe and inclusive space for everyone to understand the work and voice their feedback. They are hierarchy-free. They put everyone on equal footing, helping to break down silos and hierarchies. And while we use hills to get the team aligned, playbacks help them to stay aligned. And we do playbacks like in the beginning, like in the different design phases. Then usually they're coupled and happening together with the agile delivery sprint demos and so on. And finally, sponsor users. Why do we need sponsor users? Well, sponsor users are, first of all, they're actual users of a product or solution we're building, and they become part of the team. They regularly contribute their domain expertise to the teams that are working on the solution, and having those sponsor users as part of our team helps us to stay in touch with real users, real world needs throughout the entire project. Yeah, so that we found that very helpful. And now the third P stands for places. Today, IBM has a global network of 97 design locations in 37 countries. This was different a few years ago. So today, the global network of IBM studios, IBM garages, that's co-creation spaces with clients, and dedicated design spaces has become home to one of the largest design workforces in the world. And these spaces have been built intentionally for cross-functional teams to collaborate and to co-create with their stakeholders, with their users, partners, and clients to deliver exceptional user experiences and breakthrough business outcomes. And they have everything. I didn't include photos, but if you Google for IBM Studios, you will find many of those. It's basically spaces that are there to collaborate and to unleash your creativity. So if we bring those three P's together, we actually can create those delightful outcomes. So I have a few examples for you. This is one of them. This is the SPSS Statistics design team. They work, some of you may know SPSS Statistics. It's a 50+ years old statistics product, like not per se the sexist thing you may believe. By fundamentally improving its experience for new and inexperienced users, they were recognized with the Red Dot Design Award in 2018. And you see they really enjoyed it, going to Berlin and getting the award. It's just one example, right? There are many more, actually many more than even fit on this slide. And why am I telling you this? Not to brag, but to show that what we're doing is actually working. And of course, Design Awards is just one metric, right? But it provides the indication for us that we are on the right path. So that's the formula. That's our formula, the formula we use, and it hasn't changed since we started our journey. All right, cool. So I hope you were hearing this one still, and if not, I just repeat it really quickly. So that's been our formula: people plus practices plus places equals great and delightful outcomes. It is still our formula. It has not changed. And that's how we innovate to create user delight. So besides that culture of innovation and a deeply grounded human-centric mindset, it takes a few more things to make this work. And one of them is like to have the right attitude and to take pride in what we're all doing. And this is an actual wall in an actual studio where the designers were kind of like reminding themselves that this is what it takes to actually deliver on that. Now that you've learned about enterprise design thinking, you might be wondering how well does it work outside IBM. In addition to the results we see from our internal teams, we get some really great data from clients. Forrester, the analyst firm, they interviewed IBM clients from a variety of geographies and industries who have benefited from applying IBM's design thinking practice. And what Forrester observed was that they were able to deliver solutions to the market much faster, while at the same time reducing efforts and costs. So if this would be a live set, I would ask you now how you believe where that comes from, but I can't hear, so I have to give you the answer right away. So the reduction in efforts and costs comes from the fact that people are actually building what is required to deliver a certain experience for the users, and not much around that, right? So we're saving energy in designing things nobody needs, and developing stuff that, again, nobody would be using. So that's a great benefit, and it's actually also speeding up the bringing those solutions to the market. The full study is available at the link provided at the bottom of the page, ibm.biz/EDT Forrester, if you want to have a look yourself. All right, so with that, let's get to the last part of today's presentation, and where we have a look at the current situation. What does it mean when many of us work remotely? Well, we can see it from what it means to conferences right now, right? And bar camps. And what challenges does that bring? But also, I'm wondering, what are the new opportunities? Well, first, for our new way of working, potentially, and also for collaborating. Let's start with a quick recap on design thinking. Often people believe design thinking means workshops. We don't believe that's true. Or using sticky notes. Well, actually, that's, in my mind, wrong as much. So what is design thinking then? For us, design thinking is a mindset that is inherently human-centered, collaborative, and in short, it's just the way we are working. It's our new way of working. It's our new culture. When we want to nurture a culture, a human-centric culture, we have to look at our teams. That's what we experienced when we pulled this off. And doing that, when we looked at our teams, we identified the skills and behaviors that healthy teams need to be successful. And in our enterprise design thinking framework, we have identified a few roles and patterns. Electronic badges for each of those roles help us to grow and measure the design thinking proficiency of our teams and individuals across the enterprise. The enterprise design thinking site now has been built to best support these roles and patterns. It provides online courses, tools, and resources, as well as a comprehensive batching system. By the way, we partner with Acclaim. Acclaim is managing those batches for you. So if you acquire a batch, then it's managed by Acclaim. It's an electronic badge you can put in your LinkedIn profile and so on. And doing that, and this sounds funny at the beginning, but our people really loved it. It's basically gamifying education. So people were on the hunt for badges, and it became a huge thing to acquire badges. We not only use it just for design thinking, we also use it for other things. But stick with design thinking for another moment. So if you acquire those badges, they come with clear criterion. What do you need to bring to earn one? And then if I know that somebody has a co-creator badge or is an advocate, then I know what that means, and that is a good thing, and we can consider this when doing composing teams. We're also constantly extending enterprise design thinking. For example, if you're looking at the right-hand side of the slide, you see the latest editions. All right, so maybe I start then with the beginning of the slide again. So basically, this slide is about the enterprise design thinking platform, and it has been built to support these roles and patterns we mentioned before, and the site provides online courses, tools, and resources, as well as the batching system. We mentioned the badges on the first slide, and that helps to grow our skills and doing that fast and at enterprise scale. The second point on the slide I wanted to make is that we're constantly extending the platform. For example, when AI came up and as a new theme and machine learning, we extended the platform to add design thinking elements that allow teams to create solutions that are both ethical and delightful for our people to use, and hopefully not frightening. Okay, so while providing online education is easy, how about practicing design thinking and doing that remotely? For a recently published paper, we compared the collaboration intensity when teams are practicing design thinking in a workshop and in between. For face-to-face workshops, the collaboration intensity, not very surprisingly, was highest when everyone came together in one space to work together, right? So we all know these like face-to-face experiences, and we find them delightful. Interestingly, when compared with remote workshops, the collaboration intensity was much higher when people were face-to-face and less high when they were remote. But when we had a deeper look at those teams who were doing remote collaboration since many years, then what they observed was a few remarkable things. Well, first of all, typically the remote workshops were shorter. Basically because nobody has the energy to workshop remotely for 5 days in a row, 8 hours a day. Also, when we go remote, we have the liberty to do smaller chunks because we don't have to fly the entire team from across the world to some place, and we just have those 5 days and everything needs to be finished by then. And then secondly, what we see is that when we go remote, that there is much less of this like workshop and done attitude, right? So when we go remotely, every small workshopping episode ends with homework. Everybody is working on until the next remote work session. And that way, interestingly, working remote can have a really profound impact on a team's working culture, because we switch from having design thinking highlights every quarter and a lot of business as usual in between to a new way of working, where design thinking becomes that new way of working at every single day, workshop or not. Let me show an example from a recent remote experience I was privileged to support as a coach. The World Design Organization, together with Design for America and IBM, sponsored a COVID-19 design challenge. Team members from different countries worked together for a couple of weeks. And the first step obviously was to onboard everybody and to agree on a time for our daily workshop. So you see this on the slide here. So we used the mural for that workshop. And next we diverged on the team's design prompt and split the entire group into 3 smaller groups, each of them tackling a different persona. We did user research and synthesized results to understand people's main pain points and opportunities to make a difference. So sounds pretty much like face-to-face, right? Next, each team created ideas and prioritized them based on the impact for their users and their feasibility. And for the top ideas, we created storyboards, and you see how we did it. I mean, they did the storyboards on paper and then uploaded the photos. We created prototypes in Vision and other tools, and we pitched and pitched presentations, and ultimately held a final playback for the organizers. What was remarkable was that most of the actual design thinking work happened in between the actual workshops. The workshop time we had together, we used to playback results, to discuss open questions, and to agree on what to do next. Overall, the experience was really engaging and powerful, and something happened that the team really loved. We got to know each other. We built up trust. So much trust and passion that many team members actually decided to continue to work together even after the official challenge ended. So that's a great story, right? So what else are we doing to foster remote collaboration? If you visited the Enterprise Design Thinking page recently, you will notice that we have updated its content as a reaction to the current crisis. We have decided to make all content on the Enterprise Design Thinking site available free of charge. Usually it's behind a paywall. That applies to the entire framework, all of the toolkit activities, the online courses, the batches, which I've been showing to you before. So if that sounds good, well, why don't you come back later, create a free account and get your practitioner badge. The course should not take you more than maybe 2 hours. ibm.com/design-thinking is the link, is the page to go to. Also, what I wanted to share really quickly, in addition to the changes on the enterprises and design thinking side, we published 2 articles which I recommend if you would like to drill a little bit deeper. The first one, the Medium post, "How to Maintain a Human-Centered Focus in a Fully Remote World," provides background on why we open up enterprise design thinking, what habits and attitudes to help us in the new world. So that is the first article, and the second article, it's about remote workshops. Remote workshops prototype a new way to collaborate. It acknowledges that design thinking is more than a workshop, but it also demonstrates how we can successfully engage during and in between remote design thinking sessions. That paper, and you recognize the graphics that was on one of the previous slides. It's based on interviews with colleagues at IBM and our own experience as the enterprise design thinking core team. And the colleagues we spoke to have been doing design thinking remotely with their clients, with their teams, not just for a few weeks like many of us, but for many years. And so we found their insights really invaluable. And you might find them inspiring and interesting too. Yeah, just have a look. No matter they might apply to your design thinking work. No matter if you might find yourself like participating in such in a design thinking workshop remotely anytime soon, or if you even have to lead one. All right, so that's what I had to pull together for you today. This concludes the presentation. I'm really happy that you were coming today, and I'm much looking forward to your questions during the Q&A session. Apologies again for the slight technical difficulties. I hope you still had a good experience. Thanks all.
Wow, thank you, Gerhard. It was quite a ride, and it was really insightful. And for me, it's always so hard to listen to it because I would love to just jump in and say, hey, but what about this and what about that? Probably the whole program, if one would try to show it to the world, it would take a whole day because you did that many things. So
yeah, it's hard to summarize it like in half an hour, but I think like half an hour remotely is a long time. And yes. I wanted to give you a gist. A lot has been written also. And as I said, I'm happy to answer a few questions.
Yes, and this is also why we will share some of the links we already started in the Fleep later on IBM Enterprise Design Thinking, so that you can read about it and watch movies and so on and so forth. Let's jump into the questions. First question from Marion. Oh no, sorry. Oh yes, from Marion. She asked an interesting question, and it was about the keys. She asked, are the sponsor users IBM internal people or IBM internals? And then she already answered it herself. And if they are actual clients, how do you find them and stay in touch with them? Are there any incentives or agreements? How do you handle that?
That's a very good question. Thank you very much for that. Actually, the sponsor user program is a key element of how we practice design thinking. And it has its origins in the fact that, like, traditionally, we were building products and solutions often more based on assumptions about the people who would use them than like having spoken to actual folks. And so we figured that if we want to up our game, we have to get access to real people. Like if we're designing a database, we got to know who those database administrators are. If we're designing a new management system for a mainframe, we got to know who these operators are and what their needs are. So it's actual people from the clients. How do we find them? Well, typically, if we do a new version of an existing product, it's typically easy because we have those existing client relationships and we talk with our sales force and we establish the relationships between the development and design teams and between the client. And so what's in it for them? Well, I mean, what's in it for them is like they get to spend quite some time with our teams, and we're really upfront and open with that. what they get though, what's really the benefit for them is, well, first of all, they get exposed to the very initial design ideas which we put together. Even before that, I mean, we do generative research with them, trying to find out what is driving them. So that gives them a huge impact and power and influence on what we're building. And then obviously, as we build out things, sometimes over weeks, sometimes over months, if you're looking at the mainframe, like these big black boxes in the data center, it can actually take a year or two until, like, from the initial idea, something gets out in the field. But they are always in the loop, right? And they get playbacks of like design concepts, initial prototypes. And if they say, well, guys, I mean, you better listen a bit more closely, right? You got it totally wrong, so you got to do it this way. Then that gives them pretty much a lot of power and influence on what we're building for them. And they're committed because they are interested, because they will use it. Finally, they have a goal to achieve. Yeah.
Thank you for elaborating that a little bit, because we received that question also in other contexts pretty often. Do we have to pay these clients that they take part, or can we even show unfinished prototypes? Can we even talk with them about things? Can we just talk with them about problems? So there's lots of hesitance everywhere.
So we don't pay them, so their payment is basically the influence they're getting. So the only thing, okay, I can share more about the sponsor user program maybe offline. But one of the key things is, I mean, it took a while to get, like, GDPR is the beast in that regard, and security and privacy, and you're sharing confidential information. So we had to get all, like, the legal paperwork in place to be able to do that. But once you have that, it's easy. All you need to do is you need to find people who are passionate about your product or about your solution, and then you find friends who help you to build something and co-create together.
Great, thank you. Thank you for elaborating on that. I think in the same line goes another question, and it's from Alexander de Baptistis. And he asks, okay, how do you at IBM ensure that teams are formed in a diverse manner? Can teams form themselves, or are they self-managed?
Mm-hmm. So, well, I think there are self-managed teams, but in general, like, the teams are formed quite intentionally. Right. So we always had teams that had a like strong development and architecture focus, which I know from the old days. So I'm with IBM this year since 24 years, and our renewed focus on design is something that came up, like, in the last 10 years or so. Before that, the teams were primarily engineers and architects. By deliberately injecting designers and offering managers who are responsible for basically for the business success of the solution and for the market fit on the one side, and then designers who have a sense for, well, first of all, to ask the right questions so that you solve the right problem in the first place, but then also to come up with delightful solutions. And adding those, like, we call those 3 in a box. So that's the 3 minimum roles we put together, and it's usually the ratio 1 OM, 1 designer, 1 coding 8 coding developers. So that's kind of a functioning mix that works for us. And then depending on what you need, we are adding additional experts. So if you're building a solution for doctors, well, it might be nice if you had some medical experience in the team, or if you do something for lawyers, then you get some legal staff and so on. Or you might involve people from, if it's an established product and it has a lot of support challenge.
Oh, he's gone
Just
again.
to inform you, you are lagging again, Gerhard, but you will be back probably in some seconds. We wait.
Perhaps we can share another question.
Okay, Gerhard, you will probably have to repeat the last part, or we just cut that off. Maybe that's better. And advise everyone: Google 3 in a box model IBM. Number 3 in a box. There you'll find information on that. But Gerhard, along these lines, I have to ask another question. It's not mine, it's from Andre Costa. Let's assume you're 3 in a box. So the offering manager, the designer, maybe also the other domain experts. You have compiled a team, but now you need this sponsor user. Or maybe a sponsor user is already the domain expert, and you need to get access to them. Now comes the question from Andre Costa. How do you manage to bring the sales guys on board for design thinking initiatives? Normally they are afraid of these open-minded initiatives because they fear that their relationship with the customer might be damaged.
Yeah,
do you have these?
Oh, absolutely. There are always people who feel they own the client, right? So I mean, I give you a multi-dimension answer. One is that, I mean, typically the salespeople have the relationship, at least in our case, not with the people who are actually doing the work, but like with the CIO or with the CTO. So that's helpful when you say, could you ask the CIO of customer XYZ to give us access to like a few motivated people who are creating functions on cloud. So that helps. The other one is we do, like, from the very beginning of.
Now he's gone again.
Yes, he's gone again, but we will wait. Tell him, and then this time the sentences should be repeated.
And I think we still have to look for the first question. So if you see Adler on the top, so this was the first one that actually asked. It was about execution of ideas. So if we have strong tool sets and processes to get the ideas. There you are back.
You are back, Gerhard. Before we go to the first question, let's just finish your sentences, Gerhard, and then we go to the other questions. Just the last two sentences.
Okay, so I'm not quite sure where it broke up, but like
you were gone for like 15 seconds or so.
Okay. Okay, so basically the question was, I believe, about how can we convince our sellers to actually to give us access to the real people? And the first part of the answer was where they usually hold the relationship to the decision makers on the client and not necessarily to the people using our applications. So that eases it a little bit. And the second one is we spend quite some amount of time in storytelling, like from the very beginning of the program. And there's so many quotes from like sponsor users who came back and said, well, this is like really, I mean, it's amazing, right? That you are listening to what, I mean, we're not used to that, right? So you're finally listening to what our actual needs are, and you even deliver those in the products. And that is something which then for sellers also becomes a good tool of saying, hey guys, I mean, we'll listen, we do what we work based on your suggestions.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. Yes, then let's go to the first questions. Adler Jorge asked, ideas can inspire, while it is execution that turns an idea into practical application. Do you follow an idea or concept until execution? When yes, or if yes, how do you approach expectation management, company politics, internal dilemmas? Oh my goodness, these are many questions in one. Do you have something to say about that?
Yeah, well, I try to give an answer, and then maybe you can follow up with the second question. But I mean, what do we do? I mean, first of all, how do we get to ideas? I mean, how to be able to follow through an idea, you need to have a proper idea first, and we do this in the classical design thinking way. We start with a design prompt. We do user research. We try to find out where are the pain points of users, and then we, in a very open-minded and inclusive way, we come up with like as much ideas as possible, and then we prioritize them, and then we try to follow through with the ones that we find are most promising. We stick to those ideas until we find out, and sometimes we find this out while we're in the middle of prototyping, that an idea is not like holding true to its expectations. Then we do something else, right? So we're trying not to invest time on an idea that we found out by testing it with users that's actually not working. But then the idea becomes like, I talked about hills. So when we look at how this actually works in product development, for those hills, we're creating epics and user stories, and that is how we're creating this contingency between the initial design phases and between the agile delivery. And then that is basically going through the entire development process until it's finally popping up in a sprint demo or in a final playback.
Okay, thank you for that, Gerhard. And now I want to ask you something, Gerhard. Normally our session is officially at its end here. However, it's no problem that we go a little bit over time for those people who still can stay. All the others who want to go to the next session should leave the room by now. And yes, join the other sessions. The ones who can stay, let's say 10 minutes longer if you still have the time, Gerhard. What do you think?
I have 10 more minutes. If there are more questions,
yes?
I'm happy to stay a little longer.
Good. Okay, then we say goodbye to everyone. Leave for your other sessions. Have fun. And the ones who stay, we will answer the questions now. Okay. Lea im Obersteig also asked a really important, interesting question. How important is the CEO commitment for the mindset to foster?
It's, in my mind, very helpful if you have buy-in from high above, right? So in our case, we were blessed by that because Ginny was really clear about what she wanted, and she was supporting it. So I'm not sure if you know that, but like the initial investment, I mean, IBM is a big shop, so take the numbers with a grain of salt. But the initial investment for the last 3 years was in the area of $100 million. That was in people, that was in places, that was in establishing practices and in changing culture. In the meantime, we have spent way more than that, but we have also like probably saved much more than that. So the program is paying for itself, and you couldn't do this as easily at that scale if you wouldn't have buy-in from the CEO. So that said, if you have buy-in from somebody who is responsible for part of the company or for a smaller part of the organization, it's still worth starting, right? I mean, so one of the things we were doing like last year very intensively was we did these advocate classes. So advocate classes or courses were one-day workshops where we brought in people from like different companies who were interested in design thinking, and we helped them to become advocates, like to find out how can I help my organization to change the way they're working. And often this then starts with like small pilot programs, pilot projects where they have to prove the value, right? So they try this new mindset on a challenge they have to solve anyway. And when they do that and they can demonstrate the success, then it becomes an easier conversation. Remember what I said during, I think I said it in passing during my presentation. So the business does not care about design thinking or agile or human-centric or whatsoever. They care about the bottom line, about numbers. And if you want to get their hearts and minds, we have to show that we can make an impact with that. So by doing the right things for our users, we will influence the bottom line.
Thank you for sharing this with us. I think also from our experience, this is a very, very important point, because what we've seen in the last 10 years, that many design thinking trainings popped up in organizations. At some organizations, training is the whole program. And this training then gets scaled prematurely. And then decision makers and all kinds of people ask, okay, do I have to become a designer now? Do I have to create user journey maps and the UX of this particular software? So there's lots of confusion around it, and I think you solved it very elegantly with the different badges. So if you're an advocate, you don't have to design yourself, but you have to understand what designers do and have to get out of the way if design thinking teams who have a skill and a craft in what they are doing, that you know what they do and that you, well, remove the innovation barriers, so to speak. So I think that's interesting.
Yeah, for advocates even more. For them, our assumption would be that they kind of like shepherd the initiative. So they become the umbrella over the teams who are trying to do this, right? They're the ones who are approving when the designers say we got to do a field research trip to actually speak to actual users, right? So there is a lot you can put in place to protect the teams that want to do the right work, and that is what our advocates and leaders are for. But don't make a mistake. I mean, we came up with that concept of advocate and leaders while we were like several years into the program, and realizing that when starting with teams alone, this is great. They have a great experience. They want to do the right thing. But if they don't get the right support from high above, it's kind of like it's falling flat. I mean, give them like a few months and they will fall back into old habits.
Yeah, very interesting, which also shows how important communication is. I heard you have dedicated communication teams, storytelling teams, and so on and so forth. A thing that is also often underestimated at other programs that we observe. Really interesting. Okay, I think Adler's question is answered, also how the political sphere is managed somehow with the advocates, because they are kind of critical nodes in the network. Let's see what the last question is that we could answer here. I have to double check. Okay, I take the one from Jasmin Wieland. And sorry for all the others that we could not answer in this session anymore. She asks, did you notice an increase in entrepreneurship once you had a higher ratio of design thinkers to developers? This 1:8 ratio.
Well, so the ratio was designers to developers. So the ratio, I mean, most of our developers are design thinkers by now, right? Because they need that human-centric mindset. When it comes to entrepreneurship, I think like there are always people who have who have a sense for it, and others maybe not. Entrepreneurship in the sense of like strengthening our offering management discipline and bringing that perspective in, and then having these like these 3-in-a-box teams where that perspective is always like part of the conversation, helped a great deal, right? Because like, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I have met developers who were really keen in like coding down that algorithm because it was so entertaining and so fun for them, and they could prove how good they are. And that's cool, right? But if that's not what the user requires and what your solution requires to create a great experience, they should probably do something else, right? And when that perspective, that entrepreneurship perspective is in from the offering managers and from leadership, that obviously helps the entire team grow there and up their game. So you didn't ask me one question, which I was actually waiting for, because I was talking about enterprise design thinking, and it's called, well, I mean, the full term is enterprise design thinking by IBM, and I often get the question, why the heck did you call it that way? And because we used to call it IBM design thinking, and that worked perfectly as long as we did it for ourselves only, right? But then when we started to work with clients and we used our tool set together with other parties, they're kind of saying, what do you mean? You mean we are supposed to adopt IBM design thinking? We are Acme. We're a proud company. We wanted to be Acme design thinking. And then we figured, okay, so we have a slight problem there. I mean, either we basically duplicate all our collateral with each and every client engagement, or we just like, we get rid of the name IBM. And we said, okay, we don't care about this to be called IBM or not. So it's still there somewhere in the fine print. For us, it's more important to provide a framework everybody can use, and that is actually helping to address those those business problems at larger scale than having our stamp on it like on the front page. So just so you know, it's the same thing. So I still have some of those like legacy IBM design thinking field guides. So the new ones all have like enterprise design field guide on it, but that's it. It's the same thing. It's just like a change in terms to make it more acceptable for other people than IBMers.
Yes, thank you for that. It's also really important to always go with the flow, whatever program you're doing. Call it what you want, design for delight, intrapreneurs, whatever works with your clients, your partners, and internally, so that you don't create additional friction around semantics and terms.
Yeah, I mean, some people have an issue with design thinking as a term per se, and I don't care. I mean, as long as we can unite behind saying we want to make a difference for our users and we want to create experiences that are delightful for them and that solve their issues and then that help them achieve their business goals. If you call it agile or design thinking or lean or Pfau or bar, I couldn't care less. Yeah,
I would say amen. That was the the best Finnish sentence for this keynote session. Thank you, everyone. Sorry that we you now had no chance to get your bio break probably and have to rush to your next session. But I think it was way too interesting to leave right away. Thank you, Gerhard.
Thanks, all.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
very
the
much.
opportunity. It was really it was fun, and I enjoyed the good questions. So keep it up,
Great.
guys.
Great.
Thank you. Thank
so
you.
then, everyone, bye. See you then.